Hello, everyone. For my project, I'll be using two mediums to represent several sociological concepts through which I make sense of myself and my lived experiences. For my first medium, I've created a musical composition that reflects my experiences with race, gender, and class. So my composition is a combination of three musical styles: blues, rock, and jazz. For the rock section of my composition, it represents my biases on gender and race. I've always grown up listening to a lot of white rock and roll groups from the 20th century. My perception of rock has always been white. As I've pictured here, I have my favorite rock band of all time, AC/DC. Um, as one might create a picture of a male doctor or a female nurse, I see a rock star as a white guy with long hair. But there are two things that taught me about race and differences in race, and that was sports and music. Through sports, I watched and I learned about many great basketball players or of color, obviously, and their struggles with race. As for music, I learned about Jimi Hendrix and Chuck Berry and other blues and rock musicians. And later, I learned about jazz musicians. Through sport and music, I specifically learned about race through the personal stories of athletes and musicians. And so, music had a significant impact on my perception and learning of race and historical racism in America. As we may associate music with race or ethnicity, we may also associate music with class and wealth. For example, jazz and classical music can be associated with wealth and the upper class. Well, why? Well, for me, I've always seen them as advanced music, formal music, and sophisticated music. It seems that jazz and classical music are associated with higher intellect and wealth. In an article for the CBC, Jerry Vinstra, a professor at UBC's Department of Sociology, found that people living on low incomes with less education tended to like country, disco, easy listening, golden oldies, heavy metal, and rap. And wealthier people tended to like blues, choral, classical, jazz, musical theater, opera, pop, reggae, rock, and world international music genres. These findings support my view on the relation between class and musical taste, where higher classes prefer more sophisticated art music and lower classes would prefer simpler, popular music. Personally, growing up, I listened to what my dad listening to, lots of classic rock, some blues, mostly 20th century, mid to late 20th century. occasional some rap in there as well. And I would describe us as being middle, depending maybe on the year, maybe middle upper class. So my journey to jazz was not related to class or wealth at all. It was just simply me discovering music that I like and I enjoyed listening and playing. So next, talk about my work and how that reflects my sociological concept. And so I started mowing grass when I was 12 years old. My dad was the one who taught me. My dad had a saying, don't do a half-done job. And that meant do your job well, with integrity, do it as close to perfect as you can. So after my first cut, he gave me a hard time because the lines that I cut were not straight, they weren't neat. It didn't look very good. So over time, I did better, did a better job, and I did it faster. And as I felt the need to, make my dad, feel proud of me, and to also make give myself, I started feeling good about my work, and when I knew I did a good job. So this socialization, from my parents, my dad specifically, transferred in everything I did. Make just chores like around the house, same with cutting the grass, my sports, right, my work, music, in school. Not doing a half-done job and doing things properly, and that had a big effect on how I developed personally. I think my work best represents my socialization growing up. It represents the massive influence that my parents had on my socialization. My parents stressed good behavior, personal qualities will result in success, specifically, having a strong work ethic, being well-mannered, being responsible, being honest. Furthermore, I think my work symbolizes my socialization from working as a landscaper for almost 5 years. I've worked with the city, I've worked privately, and through working, I think that's also another way I've learned to behave in society, behave in a work environment because it's different than how I behave at home or at school. And furthermore, I think just the symbolization of my grass cutting here and how the stripes, which is just the alternating pattern that you see on the grass, is so it symbolizes what my parents taught me about doing the best work I possibly can. And you can see on the right, there's obviously we got kind of a unique pattern, whereas on the left it's a little more straight ahead. But I feel like keeping my lines straight and keeping the pattern true, right, to the best of my abilities, like on the left, right. I think that just represents myself overall, just personally trying to keeping things between the lines, and I'm not someone who likes to get all abstract and crazy. I want things to need to be a certain way, need to be done a certain way, and I think that all started with my socialization, my family, my parents, specifically my father, who was a role model. And I think that there's some recent work I did. Right on the right is in the summer, and on the left is in the fall. Just recently, I think it's just translated into my work and everything I do, and I think this is a great example of how my socialization from my family has affected me. So in conclusion, I feel that, personally, music has had a significant impact on my life. I am studying it here at Capilano. I'm in the jazz program. It's just how I started learning about, like race and, equality, and like the civil rights movement. Same with sports. I learned from there too. People like Bill Russell, Miles Davis, and these African Americans who step forward and to be leaders in their community and push for quality. That's how I learned about it through their personal, and lived experiences. And I think that kind of just has shaped how I see race and quality. And then, furthermore, as especially growing up and listening to rock and roll, I always had this idea, that class, and music could be related as well. I thought of, oh, someone else is a jazz or classical. It's they're probably a little older, they have more money, they're wealthier, and yeah, so that just really, that's just kind of these ideas that came to my head when I hear those things, my associate by association. And then, growing up, socialization, my family and my parents continue to have a massive, influence on me. And I don't think school or, as I mentioned, work had a little bit to do with it, but I don't think they even close to what, growing up, what I learned and how to behave and stuff. That was definitely my parents and specifically my father. So thanks for watching my short little presentation, and yeah, thanks for listening.